Well, let's see if this is gonna make my life better or worse. Stay tuned for potentially really awful sound.
This is happening. I think I recorded my first impressions about these fragrances about half a year ago, and then I was just too terrified to say what I really thought. I think now that the brand of Francis Kurkdjian has made his coin, they have it coming. They have it coming. I think somebody has to say it now. So here is to my very own brand overview of the Maison Francis Kurkdjian, or Maison Kurkdjian, the house of Francis Kurkdjian, the almighty Francis Kurkdjian, who's made probably half of the bright, flamboyant, gourmand, and all kinds of perfumes that became almost all-time bestsellers in their own right. So it was only a matter of time until a maestro of this caliber would open his own house, and the audience, the perfume lovers, took it with stride. Baccarat Rouge alone, the almighty Baccarat that I still smell every third person of some kind of Baccarat-ish clone or Baccarat itself. I don't really like fragrances that have an overdose of Evernil, and this is what gives the Baccarat Rouge its very signature iodine type of profile. Without a question, is a historic fragrance, but I can't stand it. To me, this is the smell of the medicine cabinet or something of that kind, because it has a lot of iodine in it. But again, in itself, it opened a new whole family of fragrances. It's still probably #1 fragrance that I get asked about from friends who are trying to dab into perfumes. So people, it has a legacy of itself. I think it's probably just as popular, if not more historic than La Vie est Belle by Lancôme, or maybe even some of those Mitsuko / Shalimars of this world, at least of the 21st century. So if you're into the kind of the contrast that is provided by the sugary sweet candy notes in this very sharp, everlasting Evernil note that again to me smells of iodine and like wound changing kind of cleanup liquids that I use in medicine, try it. There are also a lot of affordable and not so affordable dupe sisters and brothers of that kind, but I'm not going to spend much time on it. We're going to move on to other fragrances by this very house, which some of them are, how do I say it politely? Okay. I find that with exception of Baccarat Rouge, almost all fragrances that I tried by this house are reminding me of something else. Sometimes to a degree that they remind me of something else that Francis Kurkdjian has done 10 years ago or so. To me, this is a very kind of dupe-like portfolio of scents. Yet, I absolutely adore the quality of the bottle make. These bottles are very well produced, they're very well made, they're truly beautiful, they're very well crafted. It's truly a pleasure to hold them in your hand. Again, I don't own a single bottle by Francis Kurkdjian, primarily because there is a #1. To me, they are very duplicative. They are like very redundant in terms of the other scents that I have in my collection or other scents that are available on the market for much more affordable price. However, if you have like $150 / $300 to just, burn, that's most of their perfumes are pretty much a no-brainer, I would say. Each of them is a very good representation in its own category of scents. But let's go a little bit more into the details, and we'll start with the rose perfume, A La Rose by again, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna say it that many times, by Maison Kurkdjian House. And here we get a promised combination of different types of rose petals. Some are sweeter, some are more fresh, some are greener. So this is a damask and centrifolio roses. It's very free-spirited elegance to a scented body range, radiant and luminous. In a nutshell, A La Rose by this house is yet another white, musky, kind of sour, somewhat fruity, I would say, somewhat fruity rose that kind of borderlines. We've seen it. Oh my God, what's the lychee rose musk thing from Ex Nihilo? I'm blanking on it. If I remember, I'll put it down somewhere in the description. When we're talking about this sour, musky, lychee type of roses, I think that Blouse by Yves Saint Laurent from their boutique line would still probably hold kind of the bar of how exquisitely that composition can smell, can sound. That said, the Blouse by Saint Laurent would be a little bit more austere and a little bit more serious compared to A La Rose by this house. And the other lychee, musky, rosy options that I remember, they would be more fruity. But it's so redundant that I can't even, unless it was selling secondhand or on a huge discount for, let's say, 70, 80 bucks, I cannot see myself buying anything like this. I think I have probably 15 different decants and samples and possibly bottles in my collection that would kind of represent the whole category. I just got done with my decant of Blouse by Yves Saint Laurent. Again, forgetting what is that Ex Nihilo one. Oh, doesn't matter. Even Blancome Miracle arguably could sort of fulfill that role. When it comes to morning roses, I would rather, let me pull it from here, I would rather actually use Prada Cologne, Infusion de Prada Rose. Because to me, this is a little bit less musky sour. It's a little bit more balanced. It's a little bit, just a tinge more powdery while still staying very fresh and very kind of English gardeny in a way. So, A La Rose, a decent representation of, fruity, musky morning roses, and yet that reminds me, I made a whole video about morning roses, so you can see all kinds of options like this, more affordable, less affordable, in that video, so check it out. I will definitely try to wear it as a morning perfume, but I will not get a new bottle. Probably will not even try to get it secondhand or on the discount, because to me it's just so redundant, so secondary in nature. The next one is going to be Féminine Pluriel. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it according to conventions, but what can you do? You can't do anything, can you? So here we have this kind of, again, musky, refreshing take on iris/violets. At first, I again get a little bit overwhelmed with the kind of the white musks here. Not my favorite overdose of an ingredient, but I guess when these perfumes were released at first, white musks were all the rage. Almost every third perfume was overdosed on white musks of this kind of the other with different twists. So I understand that this was probably just the kind of the fashion of the time. So further down the road, it eventually becomes more of a powdery iris, kind of resting in a puddle of violets. And to be honest, I'm not really a big fan of violets. I would still favor Atelier Cologne Iris Rebelle, like more contemporary molecular type of iris scents. And if I really wanted something very, very powdery and irisy, I would still go with 1904 by Histoire de Parfums. When it comes to feminine pluriel, is it like appropriate? Yes, it's very appropriate. Is it memorable? No. Elegant? Certainly. Stylish? It reminds me one of those like Instagram ads that, you know, that's like the style of ads, if you know what I mean, like the Instagram native advertisements that kind of started in the middle of 2000s, let's say 2012, 15, or things of that nature. And some of the brands and some of the influencers still like are beating the dead horse. You still see those kind of like millennial pink, rose gold, black and white compositions that are just pretty much they're beaten to death. Like how much can we do the same thing over and over? This is what this makes me think of. It's one of those morning violets elegant perfumes that's been done so many times, and I just don't see a point in this perfume existing. Yet if you're giving it as a gift to a colleague or to a person who is very much like a white silk blouse type of person, that could really work. And again, the quality of the make of the bottles and their design, it's top notch. So I think most of these perfumes make me think of a very decent, expensive gift, but not something that I would buy or wear myself. Yeah, that's pretty much it. A quick detour we're gonna make and talk about the fragrance Amiris for men. Explicitly marketed for men. Though like none of the fragrances I talk about, I would say are like cannot be worn by men. I'd rather argue you can wear whatever you want to wear, whatever makes you feel good, whatever gives you some kind of inspiration or like any kind of emotion that you're seeking, to be honest. It's just a scent. Just the fact that you're a male by gender doesn't mean you can't eat strawberries, right? So why can't you smell of strawberries? Anyway, but this is explicitly marketed toward men. Amiris Homme. To be honest, every time I get into these aisles of fragrances marketed toward men, I go into this kind of like quiet, desperate stupor. This like loud sameness, just I think the screaming sameness of designer perfumes made for men even beats the almost synthetic candy obesity that is marketed toward women. I understand that each of the marketing segments has its own kind of like done, you can say argue to perfection. I would argue down to just like the absolute worst, lowest possible common denominator kind of thing. So this is one of those fragrances. It's not bad. None of the fragrances that I tried by this house are bad. None of them. They're all very decent. For their price, I still have a lot of questions in terms of their originality. But I just can't, there are like 4 generic type of flavors when it comes to fragrances marketed toward men. They're like outrageously loud, sometimes mineral or somewhat spicy aquatics. There are polished leathery fragrances. There are tobacco gourmands and just hot spices. That's pretty much it. That's all we get in that aisle. And this is why I would actually argue that if you're a guy and you want to develop your nose and you want to develop a sense of scent and develop your style and your opinion, your personal take on the world of olfactory design, you have to step out of that aisle because there's like very little there. You'll have to be kind of trying to distinguish between 50 flavors of a Zara home most of the time. So it just smells so generic that like I almost want to double check if this is what I got. Yeah, Amiris Homme. As time passes, it grows on you a little bit. It's essentially, this is like a very screaming Creed Aventus, you name it, all of those kind of like windshield washing liquid type of scent. But this one becomes a little bit sweeter in a kind of coconutty type of sense as it opens up. Almost with white chocolate sweetness somewhere at the heart, so it kind of becomes a little bit more round, a little sweeter, a little more, I would say, friendly. But for example, I would compare it with L'Envol by Cartier, but there you get more of a kind of leathery notes. And here, it kind of stays sharp, fruity windshield washing liquid. Amiris Homme. This is probably first and last time anybody is gonna watch my review of a male fragrance. I'm sorry, not sorry. They're just boring. Most of them are boring, with exception of amouages. Amouages that are marketed toward men, there are a lot of cool stuff there that I actually wear myself. All right, let's change gears. This is Grand Soir, another kind of like crowd pleaser, and I think it was one of the best sellers before Baccarat Rouge came on board. It's essentially very resinous, sweet amber vanilla. A lot of people argue on the internet if this is resinous enough or fruity enough to be considered like the best well-rounded amber scent of all time. So it definitely is a strong contender, at least in the minds of many people. This is why I got myself a travel. I love ambery scents. For me, this is like an evening staple. They are both soothing, comforting, yet luxurious. I really enjoy this type of accord. However, in my not so humble opinion, if we're going to like truly opulent, resinous, kind of oriental, but not spicy, not prickly, like super smooth, dense, resinous amber, L'Ambre Extreme by L'Artisan Parfumeur will easily beat Grand Soir by Kurkdjian. Like, I don't know. In my mind, there's no comparison. Grand Soir is great, but it's like a younger teenage sister of L'Ambre Extreme. You know, the kind of character that hasn't really developed neither personality nor style, while L'Ambre Extreme, stunning. To me, this is the most rounded, resinous, heavy amber that doesn't go herbal, doesn't go spicy, doesn't really go too fruity either. It's just a perfect bowl made of pure gold. It's just this little sphere that's just shining and polished. Beautiful. Do I like Grand Soir? I do. But for the price that L'Ambre Extreme can be difficult to find online. But if you do find it, it's worth every dollar. Packaging is just as stunning as Kurkdjian's. It's just a different kind of aesthetic. But if you're a really big fan of things that he did for, I think he did things for Elie Saab and early Narciso Rodriguez. This is kind of like sends us to the old days where Francis Kurkdjian was the king of gourmands. And this is very good. This is very good. I'm not gonna say that it's not. It's just not the best, in my not so humble opinion. All right, let's get another popular one, which is Oud Satin Mood. I want to like finish with gourmands for today. And again, thank you so much to Bella from New York who sent me this like generous package of decants, because otherwise we would not be gathered here today. Okay. In the opening, so Satin Oud Satin Mood. In the opening, it suggests kind of these caramelized notes, things that I borderline can point towards something like One or The Only One by Dolce & Gabbana, or maybe like even Yves Saint Laurent Libre. So those like sweet caramel-like, almost Starbucks caramel syrupy-like openings or hearts of certain perfumes. To me, that it has a lot of liquid caramel in it at the opening, and yet it has very distinct sharpness. It's almost scratchy the way that oud comes here. It's like a seesaw that has continuous flow of caramel pouring all over it. It's a really bizarre, contrasting experience. I get why it's so popular, yet I would say that Oud Saffron Flower, I think by Eric Butterbaugh, would be a little bit more elegant form of a similar idea for me. There are a number of sweet hyper luxury ouds that already exist on the market, and I'm not even touching the rose oud combinations because those are thousands. It's such an old type of olfactory profile. I'm not even going there. We're talking about something a little bit more comparable to like caramelized ouds. So gourmands, but the kind of like a more modern take that takes on this kind of like edible gourmands idea plus oud. I would still say that Oud Saffron Flower by Eric Butterbaugh I prefer more. The caramel here would land really nicely, again, for those of you who like adding different kinds of syrups to your lattes. Otherwise, this is a bit cheesy to me. It lasts forever. It lasts to the point that I just want to kill myself. So for those who like to leave a lasting impression, I mean, people might hate you, but they'll remember you. This is one of those. It kind of depends on how sensitive your nose is. If you're the kind of person who does like 10 sprays regularly, you'll be fine. If you're more like me and like I usually limit myself to 2 sprays, or probably with this case just 1, tread your path lightly. Nevertheless, I would say that the Oud Satin Mood is one of the more unique offerings by this house, and kind of like follows Baccarat Rouge in that regard. All right. What else do we have here? We have Amiris for Femme. So this one is for girls. Oh my God. I kid you not, I have probably 15 bottles and decants of that kind. These are flowing, non-sweet, kind of summer/spring white florals. So think lily of the valley, magnolia, maybe a little bit of a lemon flower. What else do we have here? Let me quickly double check. It's supposed to be woody and aromatic. Oh no. Powdery? Are you kidding me? Okay, maybe the opening that is very citrusy that gives me this almost like lily of the valley effect. Yeah, I think I know what it is. It's the citrusy opening together with the sweetness of violets, kind of like violet candies. If you've ever been to France or Toulouse in particular, you probably know what I'm talking about. So combine the two, and for whatever reason, that gives me the impression of lily of the valley and all of those like magnolia type of flowers, where essentially it is a slightly different accord. The vetiver, musk, and amber are at the base. Middle notes are amyris and iris, hence the name. Ask me. If you want the dupe video, ask me. I'll probably pull 10 out of my collection of all kinds of price points. It's just, to me, why? What was the point of this? I don't know. I guess maybe he has a lot of nieces, you know, like 13 years old. Like, what will you give your nieces for, like, you know, a spring break as a gift, or for Christmas? Something like this. Why not? Yeah, it's a very elegant, non-controversial gift, expensive, well-packaged gift of non-sweet spring florals. And that's where we're gonna finish that description. And the last one on the roster today is Gentle Fluidity Silver. Okay. Wow. Okay. This is spicy, kind of mineral, almost salty. Maybe it's just the opening. Essentially, what we are given here as accords are aromatic, fresh, spicy, woody, musky, powdery. If it is a fougere, right, like an aromatic kind of green, green herbal type of perfume, it lays in a very high frequency range. It's very flowy, it's piercing, it just flies away, it just like runs away from you the moment you spray it. I imagine this is probably long lasting, even though that would be tragic for me. It grows on me. I would say the Gentle Fluidity Silver, let me explain. I think there is creed called Silver Spring Mountain Water, something of that nature. For some reason, this makes me think of icy water, like a creek, you know, that's melting, finally like melting with all of these like icy water flowing through it, and some like old dead grass and moss and all of this stuff kind of mixed together. That's what I'm thinking about, and this is why I like it. This is one of those very imaginative, light, flowing, kind of floating fougères, like an aromatic perfumes. And for that, I thank it, yet I still think there are many, probably something rose something by Lilabo, Roses on Ice, Kilian. There are many those kind of floating aromatic green, somewhat salty mineral compositions that send you that way. Often it becomes salty to me just because it's so potent. It's almost like an overdose to my nose, and I think that's what turns it into saltiness. It's not necessarily salty. It's the same way as a lot of green fragrances start smelling like pickles to many people. I think it's kind of the same effect that Gentle Fluidity Silver creates in my nose, and it's a bit of an overdose. If worn sparingly, it could be a very imaginative late February, early March kind of weather type of scent that kind of takes you places on that, you know, on this sunny walk when the weather is still pretty cold, but the ice is finally melting in the forest, and you just walking and seeing the water dripping everywhere and like the patches of land and the old last year's grass appearing. This is what this makes me think of. Again, it's secondary. Will I ever buy myself a bottle of this? I think I could easily, maybe not so easily, but I could find something a little bit more affordable that gives you the same fresh, green, aromatic, somewhat mineral profile. If you know of any good candidates, please let me know. I'll think about it. If I can think of anything, I'll put it in the description down below. Otherwise, you know what? Bluebell or any kind of this icy juniper or a little bit gin-like containing colognes. I think Penhaligon's has something like that. Is it either called Bluebell or Juniper Spring? Am I imagining it? Maybe. But I swear to God, like, there are probably dozens and dozens of perfumes, and there will be at least 3 that I will be able to find for like $50–$60. That said, it's such a rare occasion for me to want to wear something like this that 5 ml by Francis Kurkdjian is a very welcome addition to my collection. All right, enough. Enough is enough, right? I'm sure the devoted fans of Francis Kurkdjian has already turned off this video, and now it's just us, the jaded cynics of the perfume community, for whom nothing is new enough and nothing is and no price is ridiculously high enough at the same time. I don't know what to tell you. I have this kind of dislike, it's not love-hate, it's like meh relationship with this house. I really enjoy the aesthetic of it. I have enormous amount of respect for what Francis Kurkdjian has done for the world of perfumery, for the history essentially. And in a way, maybe his line is literally designed to be friends and family kind of fun, you know, people who are already appreciating his creations, people who don't want to shop elsewhere to figure out the whole landscape of perfumery. In a way, if you just wanted to have kind of these like luxurious, expensive statement-like perfumes in your collection, but you really didn't want to, you know, spend all this time researching the perfume world, figuring out what the fragrance families are and what do they represent and what are the options. You just buy yourself a collection of Kurkdjian perfumes and you're pretty much set. They have a little bit of everything, and all of their examples of how they do this and that are really good. My concern is that they're not memorable, and Francis Kurkdjian made his name on being memorable. That's where the kind of the controversy, the dilemma lies for me. I would expect that if for his own brand, he would put a spin on it. You know, he would just twist it ever so slightly, or not so slightly, because he's not really a man who's known for half measures. And yet, with exception of Oud Satin Mood that I had the privilege to try, and the Baccarat Rouge, all of the other ones are very kind of like good quality, but forgettable, secondary type of compositions. Let me know what you think of that. Do you have similar impressions? Do they differ? Do you know of any potential really good dupes for the signature fragrances by this house, or vice versa, like other fragrances and by this house that you will never ever even consider buying a dupe because the way that they make it, nobody else can? We'll be really curious to hear your thoughts about that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was entertaining and at least somewhat useful. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, do the whole thing, you know. I did mine, now you do your job. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.